We speak to Lim Wei Jiet, a constitutional lawyer. Wei Jiet, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Do politicians in Malaysia, including the Prime Minister, have any form of immunity from legal prosecution or civil suits during their tenure, similar to that of, say, the United States? And if so, how does that work?
To my understanding, there's no such immunity for politicians, including the Prime Minister, from any civil suit in Malaysia. So what Datuk Sri Anwar's lawyers, if I understand correctly, is that he's seeking the federal court to declare that the Prime Minister cannot be sued in a civil suit because he has qualified immunity. And that doctrine may have been accepted in the United States, countries like the US, but not in Malaysia thus far. And in fact, our federal constitution and our laws are silent on this. And when the laws are silent, then obviously you go back to the overriding principle that everyone is equal before the law, including the Prime Minister. And in fact, under our federal constitution, even the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and the state rulers, the sultans, they are not immune from civil or criminal liability. There are different processes that are applicable to the rulers. For example, you need the AG's consent before you prosecute, or that there are special courts for proceedings involving the rulers, but they are not immune at the end of the day. So if the rulers are not immune, and there's no provision for the Prime Minister to be immune, it, to my opinion, is quite a far-fetched argument to make that the Prime Minister has immunity from civil proceedings in Malaysia. But that has to be decided at the federal court, you know. The other angle you have to look at this is that the allegation that Yusof Rauter has made. Now, I'm not saying this is true or false, but the allegation made is that Anwar had, sexually assaulted him in October 2018. Now, in October 2018, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim was not yet the Prime Minister. Then that brings into question that even if there is such a concept as qualified immunity, is it really applicable on the facts of this case?
Now, PM Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim's lawyer said that a civil suit against a sitting Prime Minister can be considered an abuse of the judicial process. Is there any validity to this claim?
Well, it really depends on the facts of the allegations, right? You know, if a random person files a suit against the Prime Minister and says that, well, I don't like your face and your face annoys me and I'm going to claim monetary compensation from you. Of course, the court's going to look at the claim and say, well, this is frivolous, I'm going to strike it out. But if it's a, usual civil claim like defamation, which happens among politicians, then the courts will look at the pleadings of the parties in court to see, well, are there enough particulars here to give meat to the complaint? Is there any legal basis for this kind of claim? Or are these allegations merely unsubstantiated and frivolous in nature? So the courts really need to look at the facts of the matter. So the critical question here is, can the Prime Minister, as a preliminary issue, even before trial has commenced, even before witnesses have been cross-examined, as a preliminary nature, put forth this question to the federal court and invite the federal court to decide merely based on affidavit evidence in writing and not after a trial, So that is the critical question that the federal court may have to consider before they even answer this question.
Wei Jiet, in the event Anwar is actually found liable in this suit, what happens to his standing as an MP and, of course, as our Prime Minister?
In the event the civil court finds that, the sexual assault allegations by Yusof Rauter has merit, it has no direct or immediate legal effect because it is a civil suit at the end of the day. At best, the court will order monetary compensation to be paid. But it's not a criminal suit, for example, where, upon conviction, obviously you should not be entitled to hold office, etc. But of course, when the civil courts finds a liability on such a serious claim, such as sexual assault, then, there are moral questions that come into play as to whether that person is fit to hold the Prime Minister's office or being part of the cabinet, for example.